We all have a story. Your story is not my story, and my story is not yours. However, we can find joy, hope, and emotional healing even through our most painful moments in life. Let's walk and take this journey of healing together, one step at a time, because your story does not define you.
Hey y'all, it's your girl, Dr. Niesha here, and welcome back to Your Story Does Not Define You, the podcast. I want to take this moment and welcome you to this podcast where we are talking about real life stories, where we are talking about struggles that people go through, or maybe things that people have experienced and how they have overcome. In this space, we don't just talk about that, but we also talk about mental health and emotional wellness and just the real experience that people go through that maybe don't often get talked about. If this is your first time joining me, I want to say welcome to Your Story Does Not Define You, the podcast. And I wanted you to take a minute and look, y'all, follow this podcast, share it with a friend, and look, keep tuning into these conversations. And if you like this podcast, give me a 5-star rating, y'all. Leave me a comment. Let me know how this podcast resonates with you and how these episodes are helping you and are blessing you. If you are joining me back once again, I want to say thank you for being on this journey with me. I appreciate every single time that you tune into this podcast and that you spend time with me and that you listen to these episodes. It means a lot to me, and I want to truly express my gratitude. Look, y'all, it is a beautiful morning here in California, and my vibe today is grateful. I knew y'all was going to know that was what it was going to be. Look, y'all, I know that I say that often. However, gratitude is like my space that I love to be in, because you don't even know how grateful and thankful I am that I get to wake up every morning and that I get to be alive, to be in this earth, to help somebody with a word or a deed in some kind of way. It is truly a blessing, y'all. And I often say that I'm grateful because I really am. And this podcast episode today, I'm super, super grateful because my second annual It Hurts to Heal Women's Conference is coming next Friday, y'all. I am super, super excited to see all the women in the room. Look, y'all, we have like 260 women already registered, and people are still registering. So I'm super, super excited to be in the room with them. And then, y'all, our keynote speaker is Dr. Anita Phillips. She is my absolute fave, y'all. And I cannot wait to be in the room and to be in that space with all of the women as we are connecting and as we are healing and as we are growing together. So I'm super excited, y'all. So with that, what is your vibe today? What is your vibe today? Because remember, you can change your vibe. Look, y'all, when I say this to y'all, I say this wholeheartedly. I know that every day that we wake up, we are not always our best selves. And I know that sometimes we wake up in a mood, or either something happens throughout the day that can shift our mood. But look, y'all, we don't have to stay in that space. Remember, you control your vibe. You control your vibe. So shift that vibe, change your vibe, reset, reground yourself, put yourself in a space that feels better for you, because you have the power to do that. All right. So look, y'all, today's conversation is a conversation that I want to have because over the past couple of weeks, I've had a lot of conversations with my clients, and there has been a common theme over this past week in conversation that people have been talking about, and that is depression. Ooh, that's that strong word, depression, right? Look, y'all, some people wear the story of depression. They are smiling, they're showing up every day, but behind that smile is a struggle. And I want to really talk about the hidden faces of depression today, because that is something that a lot of people are struggling with, that people don't talk about, and people don't even know that people are internally struggling with depression. So I want you to imagine someone who shows up every day, someone who does everything that they're supposed to do, somebody who makes people laugh, supports everyone around them, but inside they feel completely alone. Now that may be you, That may be somebody that you know, or that may be somebody that is really masking it really well and you don't even know and you don't see them. So today we're talking about those many faces of depression, but not just depression in the way people usually think about it. We're going to talk about the mask people wear to hide their struggles and why depression does not have to define the story of someone's life. Okay. This podcast is called Your Story Does Not Define You. And look, I just want to tell you right now that depression does not have to define the story of your life. And so many people picture depression as someone who's always sad, someone who can't get out of bed or isolates, or someone whose struggle is visible to everyone around them, meaning that you could just see it. Maybe they wear their depression on their face. Maybe you can see it in their low energy, their low moods, or their sadness, and maybe their affect is congruent with whatever mood they're in. But can I share with you that the truth is depression has many faces, and sometimes it hides behind productivity. Sometimes it hides behind humor. Sometimes it hides behind success. And sometimes it hides behind anger. Have you ever thought about that, y'all? Sometimes depression hides behind anger. And there are so many people who are smiling in public, showing up for work, caring for their families, and supporting everyone else around them, while privately they are carrying a heavy emotional weight. And that weight is depression. So today, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the many faces of depression, how people often mask their struggles, and why does depression feel so isolating or can feel isolating, and how depression does not have to define your entire life story. So if you struggle with depression for a long time, or if you know someone who has, my hope is that today's conversation reminds you that you are more than your struggle. You are more than your struggle. And I want you to hear me when I say that. You are more than your struggle. Depression happens to people more times than not. And a lot of times it hits when we don't even realize it, right? It hits when life circumstances happen and we might feel like we're okay, but internally we are unraveling a little bit at a time. So I want to just help you to understand a little bit about depression. So depression is one of the most common mental health conditions in the world. And even though it's one of the most common mental health conditions in the world, it is yet still so deeply misunderstood because a lot of people have their own version of what depression looks like. And yes, some of their versions are correct. However, it goes a little bit deeper. And so for some people, depression looks like sadness. But for many others, it shows up in the ways that people don't even immediately recognize in the moment. And so depression can also include things like emotional heaviness, feeling disconnected from life, having fatigue that doesn't go away, difficulty concentrating, irritability, loss of interest in things that once mattered or things that people once enjoyed, or feeling like you're just going through the motions, feeling like, okay, you're just waking up every day and you're wash, rinsing, and repeating, but feel as if you're just moving along, not feeling fulfilled, not feeling like you're moving anywhere, not feeling like you're going anywhere. These are all signs of depression. So sometimes people often describe depression as feeling like they're living life in a grayscale instead of color. Other times people say it feels like carrying emotional weight that no one else can see, just feeling burden and having that burden on you that feels so heavy, but not really understanding yourself, what you're feeling, why you're feeling, and how did you get there, right? And so if we look at this, one of the most challenging things about depression is that it can quietly shape the way a person sees themselves and their future. And so over time, someone might start to think things like, Maybe this is just who I am. Or maybe things will never change for me. Or maybe this is just my life. And maybe this is how it's going to be. So if I could share this with you, I just want to say that depression is an experience. It's not an identity. Depression is a mental health illness. It is not an identity. And just like most of the mental health illnesses that people experience, you can overcome it. There are things that you could do to help support you to not be in the space that you're in. So, one of the reasons depression is so misunderstood is because it doesn't look like the same thing for everybody, right? So, what someone else's depression looks like may not look like the same for somebody else. So, let's talk about some of the different ways depression can show up, okay? And so, when we talk about this, these are some of the many faces of depression, all right? So, emotional depression is a form that most people recognize. And so when we think about emotional depression, it can include persistent sadness, crying frequently, feelings of hopelessness, feeling emotionally overwhelmed. But look, y'all, this is only one face of depression, because remember, there's many faces of depression. So if we look at numb depression, for some people, depression doesn't feel like sadness. It feels like nothing at all. They may feel emotionally flat or disconnected, or they might say things like, I don't feel sad. I just don't feel anything, right? So that's a person who is not feeling their emotions. And this kind of depression can be confusing because people around them may assume everything is fine, but internally, they may feel detached from themselves. They may feel detached from others, and they may feel detached from life. Remember, y'all, this is numbing depression, okay? So let's talk about high functioning depression. What does that look like? Some people continue to function at a level while struggling internally. They can function and still be themselves. So this just means that they still go to work. They still take care of responsibilities. They still meet deadlines. They still appear organized and capable. But can I just say this? Internally, they may feel exhausted. They may feel overwhelmed and emotionally drained. And many people with high functioning depression hear the phrase, but they seem fine. They were okay. And that can make their struggle feel even more invisible when they're not feeling seen, when they're not feeling heard. And when we hear stories on the news or in the media about people ending their lives by suicide, you hear that, but they seemed fine, but they seemed like they were okay because they put on that mask, they put on that face, and they knew how to show up every day. They knew how to show up and take care of business, take care of responsibilities, and do all the things that they needed to do. But internally, again, struggling, unraveling a little bit at a time, feeling invisible, feeling unseen, and feeling unheard. That's deep. Let's think about that for a minute. So let's talk about irritable depression. What does that look like? That's another face of depression, right? Is irritability. What does that look like? So instead of sadness, sometimes you may see somebody that feels easily frustrated, impatient, restless, always agitated. And this one is definitely a particular face and a common face among men or individuals who were taught not to express vulnerability. But irritability can sometimes be a sign that something deeper is going on emotionally. And so if we look at that, you often hear about people that are just always angry, always frustrated, always upset. What is that about? What is that about? If we look deeper into that frustration, if we look deeper into that sadness, into that constantly on edge, that definitely is depression hiding underneath there, right? Definitely depression hiding underneath there. Because if I could share with you all that anger is a secondary emotion. And so anger sometimes cover up a deeper emotion underneath there. And that is also one of the masks of depression. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. All right. So let's dive in some more and talk about these masks of depression. So we just talked about some of the faces of depression, which are emotional depression, numb depression, high functioning depression, and irritable depression. Those are the faces of depression, right? So let's talk about the mask of depression. Let's talk about the mask of depression, because many people learn to mask their depression. They hide what they're feeling for many reasons. They hide because of fear of judgment, fear of or cultural expectations, feeling like they have to be strong, not wanting to burden others, believing no one will understand them. And over time, people can become very skilled at hiding their pain. So let's talk about some of those common masks, because these are the people that show up in my therapy room. These are the people that don't show up in my therapy room because they feel like, okay, I'm just going to keep wearing this mask that I'm wearing, because if I keep showing up and if I keep doing the things that I need to do, then nobody will know that I'm struggling. But deep inside, they cry out for help and they want somebody to see them. But when they don't feel seen, when they don't feel heard, then they keep trying to do this all by themselves and feeling like they have to do it alone. But remember, you guys, you never have to do this alone. You never have to walk life's journey alone. We are in this together. And if you are ever in a space where you feel like you need help, where you feel like you need support, please reach out to somebody, okay? And get the help and support that you need. So let's talk about the achiever mask, okay? So this is a person who appears very successful. They may be high performing, productive, responsible, and may appear very driven. But sometimes achievement becomes a way to distract themselves from emotional pain. So externally, they may look accomplished. They may look like they have it all together and, they're doing what they need to do and they're on fire. But internally, they may feel empty or exhausted. Is that you? Are you wearing the achiever mask? Think about that. Let's talk about the caregiver mask. So this is the person who takes care of everyone else. They may always be the one who listens to others, offers support, and shows up when people need them and when people need their help. However, they are the ones that rarely talk about their own struggles, because sometimes caring for others becomes a way to avoid confronting their own pain. Y'all, this is the caregiver mask. Is that you? Are you wearing the caregiver mask? So let's talk about the comedian mask. Some people use humor as a shield. They may be the funniest person in the room, always making people laugh, always keeping conversations light. But humor can sometimes hide deep emotional struggles, because they're laughing so that they don't have to feel their own pain. And when they're laughing and making other people laugh, then they don't have to tap in to those deep emotional wounds that they may be struggling with. Ooh, the comedian mask, y'all. Is that you? Are you wearing the comedian mask? Think about that. So let's talk about the strong one mask. Ooh, the strong one mask, right? Many people become known as the strong one, the strong person. They are the person who others rely on constantly because, hey, they can handle it. I always go to them and talk to them. They can handle anything that I say. And they may even start to believe that they can't show weakness because people depend on me. I can't look like I don't have it all together because I'm supposed to be strong for everybody. So guess what happens? They carry their pain quietly. They carry their pain quietly Because again, everybody depends on them. Everybody looks to them for support. Everybody looks to them for what they need. The strong one, y'all. Are you wearing the strong one mask? Is that you? Am I in your neighborhood? Think about that. Are you wearing a mask? Is this you? So let's talk about the mask of anger. Now, I talked about earlier about how we talked about the face of irritable depression. Remember, I shared with you just a minute ago that anger is a secondary emotion and there's always something underneath it. So another powerful mask is the mask of anger that people wear. And this often shows up in men. And Black men particularly. There are statistics that show that Black men deal with their depression through anger, and it shows up through anger, right? So sometimes depression doesn't come out as sadness. It comes out as frustration, irritability, or anger. And so someone may feel easily triggered, very impatient, overwhelmed, constantly on edge, because anger can sometimes be that protective emotion. So if you look at what I said about anger being a secondary emotion, anger is protecting the emotion of depression. However, underneath all that anger, there may be sadness, exhaustion, loneliness, feeling unheard or unsupported, and feeling unseen. But when anger becomes the visible emotion, sometimes people may misunderstand what's really happening. So they label the person as difficult or as aggressive instead of recognizing that they may be actually struggling. They may be actually struggling with something, but people don't see behind that. And so I do some work with kids in foster care, and I do some work with kids in a group home or a short-term restricted treatment program. And oftentimes these kids have behaviors. They've experienced a lot of trauma. They've been through a lot of things. And sometimes they've been bounced from placement to placement, from group home to group home, from foster home to foster home. And a lot of times these children carry a lot of aggression. They carry a lot of emotional aggression and a lot of physical aggression. And I train staff about how to see beyond the behavior, to see behind the emotion, because behind that aggression is something else going on. There is a root cause. And a lot of times staff get easily offended or affected because when a kid has a behavior and when a kid lashes out at them, they think that they're coming for them and they think that they're coming for them intentionally. But I try to remind them that behind that behavior is a need. Behind that behavior is a need. That even though the youth is coming off as difficult or as aggressive, there is an underlying need behind that behavior. And let's look deeper than the behavior. Let's look deeper than the aggression and see what that need is. What is that need that person needs? And so I want you to think about yourself for a minute. I want you to do some self-reflection right now. And I want you to think about the different faces that we just talked about depression. And I want you to think about the different masks of depression. And I really want you to ask yourself a question. Am I wearing any of those masks? Am I on borderline wearing one of those masks? Am I struggling to show up for myself because I'm too busy showing up for everybody else? Am I laughing and being the comedian because I want other people to smile? However, on the opposite side of that, I'm not smiling, I'm frowning. I want you to think about that. And I really want you to do some self-reflection and self-assessment on yourself. And I want you to think about, are you one of those people that are wearing a face of depression, or are showing up and wearing a mask of depression. So when depression is masked, I want to share this, that people often struggle alone. And they feel like they are in this struggle alone. So they may think things like, no one would understand. If I talk to somebody, they wouldn't understand me. Or they may say things like, everyone expects me to have it together. And the more someone hides their pain, the more isolated they begin to feel. The isolation can deepen depression. And so when a person isolates themselves, that allows the depression the opportunity to thrive in their silence. And as that depression keeps thriving in their silence, then again, that's when you see people getting to the place where they want to end their lives, because they are in such a dark tunnel. They're in such a dark room that they don't see anything outside of that darkness. And sometimes that darkness can overtake a person to the point that they decide to end their lives. And so you all have heard me say that healing doesn't happen in isolation. Can it happen in isolation? Yes, it can, with the help of God, because God can do anything. He can meet anybody where they're at. And sometimes people are in a space where they can't get connected to safe people, or they don't want to be connected to safe people. And sometimes, yes, God can meet them where they're at. However, can I just say that healing often begins when someone feels safe enough to be honest about what they're experiencing, when they can be honest enough to open up and say, hey, I am not okay, or hey, I've been struggling and I really don't know what to do with this. And I know there's so much judgment, and people feel that, okay, if I tell people exactly what space that I am in, they're going to judge me, or I'm going to be looked at as the weak person. But can I just say how freeing it is when you can share your feelings and emotions, when you can get it out, and when you can free yourself from that thing that is tormenting you and haunting you. It is okay not to be okay. You are not going to show up as your best self every single day. And I tell people that all the time. As a therapist, I know the tools and the strategies, and I can talk myself off the ledge. But if I told people that I showed up every single day as my best self and that I was okay every single day, I would be telling people a lie, because I'm human just like everybody else. And I have days too where I don't feel my best, or either I have days where I'm experiencing my own life challenges through my families, through relationships, through work, whatever it may be. I have my own challenges. But let me tell you what helps me is, first of all, my faith in God definitely roots and grounds me. And I know that I could go to God and I can pray and I can read his word and I can hear something that is going to resonate with me and give me the push that I need to keep going. But if I'm honest, can I just share with you all that sometimes I don't feel like praying, because I could be in a space where I just don't have it in me. And maybe during those times, all I have to do is cry, and all I can do is cry. But can I tell you, even in that crying, I feel a release. There's a scripture in the Bible that talks about God being able to understand our tears, that those that sow in tears will reap in joy. So sometimes I just cry even when I don't have the words to explain it. I know that God understands me. But can I just also share this? That sometimes I need a human person to talk to. I need a human person that I can be vulnerable with. I need a human person that I could be honest and transparent with and say, hey, I'm not having a good day. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm whatever the case may be, right? And when I am able to connect with that person, can I just say that is so freeing? It is so freeing. So for many people just like me, faith definitely can offer comfort and perspective during seasons of emotional struggle. There are so many passages in the Bible that reminds us that difficult seasons are not the end of our story. Y'all, difficult seasons are not the end of our story. For example, in Psalms 34:18, it says, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and he saves those who are crushed in spirit. And so every time that I read this verse, that verse reminds me and it reminds us that brokenness and struggle are not signs of failure. They are a part of the human experience. And even in moments when someone feels emotionally crushed, that they are not alone. We are not alone. Even in moments when we feel emotionally crushed, we are not alone. So whether someone approaches depressions from a clinical, emotional, or spiritual perspective, the important message is this, y'all. Your pain matters and your story is still being written. And so even if you are in a place where you feel like depression is a stronghold for you, that is not your story. You are still alive and you are still rewriting your story. And remember that even in those times that we can be met wherever we are. We can be met wherever we are by God. We can be met wherever we are by a therapist. But remember, this causes us to be vulnerable. We have to tap into our vulnerability and we have to lean in a little bit. Even sometimes with God, even though he knows everything about us, even before we say it out loud, even before we think it. If we are those type of people that we feel like, I just don't have nobody I could trust. I don't have a safe person, or I tried to tap into a safe person and they shared my business. If that's you and you feel like I really don't have anybody that I can talk to, and you feel that maybe my healing can only happen from God. Look, God still wants you to be vulnerable with him. He still wants you to say, I am overwhelmed. God, I am struggling right now. I am overwhelmed with sadness. I'm overwhelmed with anger and aggression, and I really need your help. He will meet you exactly where you are. He doesn't require you to be perfect. He doesn't require you to have it all together. Because remember, I've shared with you before, there's no perfect people allowed. He can meet you where you are. So let's talk about, how do we reclaim our stories? How do we reclaim our stories back? One of the most harmful things that depression can do is convince someone that their struggle defines who they are. But remember, as I shared with you earlier, depression is an experience. It is not your identity. It may be a part of your experience, but it's not your whole story. So reclaiming your story begins with small steps. And first of all, the first step is being honest and transparent with yourself. Being honest and transparent with yourself in the fact that you acknowledge that you are struggling. You acknowledge that you are overwhelmed. You acknowledge that you feel like, okay, this is not me. This is not the person that I normally am. And I know that I haven't been myself every day. So reclaim your story. This may even look like you reaching out to someone who you trust for support. Because remember, healing happens better when we are connected to safe people. Speaking with a therapist or a counselor, building small routines that support your well-being. Challenge that inner dialogue that you're having with yourself, that harsh self-talk. Challenge that inner dialogue, and then allowing yourself compassion instead of criticism. Remember, we have to be kind and nice to ourselves, the same exact way that we would be kind and nice to somebody else. And most of all, healing rarely happens all at once, y'all. It often happens through small, consistent steps forward. And I want you to recognize that this is not something that is a one and done. And I say this all the time. Healing is not something that is a one and done. And look, y'all, I just recently published my second book. The title is called It Hurts to Heal: From the Pain of Brokenness to the Blessing of Healing. And in this book, I encourage people to understand and know that healing is a journey, and that we have the capability to take as much time as we need. That there's going to be times where we may feel productive, where we may feel like we've taken 5 steps forward and 3 steps back. I want you to know that healing can happen, y'all. It may happen in small steps. And I encourage you to get that book, Because in that book, I talk about a lot of things. I talk about healing from relationships, healing from grief and loss, healing from parent and child wounds, and also healing the inner child. And then I also talk about how can we continue our journey and move forward and turn the chapter with grace, knowing that God is with us and God has us. And this healing journey, it truly is a journey, and it doesn't have to look perfect, y'all. So get that book. It Hurts to Heal: From the Pain of Brokenness to the Blessing of Healing. You can buy it at my website, drniesha.davis-massey.com. You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it anywhere books are sold. And when you read that book, let me know how that book blessed you. Give it a 5-star rating so that someone else will be encouraged to also do the work. And let us heal together, right? So what I want you to realize, if you haven't realized anything else throughout this conversation that we've had today, I really want you to hear me. If you've been struggling with depression for a long time, you may feel like it's become a part of who you are. You may really feel like, no, I've been like this for a long time. And I tried to get over it. I haven't been able to get over it. So you've owned it. And you really may feel like, no, depression is a part of who I am. But can I just say this? That depression does not get to define your life. Yes, it may be a chapter in your story, but it is not the author of your story. You are still someone with value. You are still someone with purpose. And your future is not limited to what you are experiencing right now. Even if the path forward feels slow, progress is still possible. Even if you feel like, I've been in this place for a really long time and I really don't know how to get out of this, remember, you don't never have to walk this path alone. That you always have support. You always have someone with you walking alongside you. And I say this all the time. I am here. I'm walking alongside you. God is walking alongside you. And I'm always rooting for you, always praying for you, and always wishing you well. Depression does not have to be the story of your life. Even if you feel like it has, I want you to change that narrative. Change the inner dialogue that you have been saying to yourself and tell yourself, I am not depression. I am not irritability. I am not sadness. I am not anger. I don't have to be strong all the time. It's okay if I'm not okay. Reaffirm yourself. Tell yourself a different story. Remember, you are becoming every day that you are alive, breathing, and walking on this earth. You are still becoming. And this life that we are living, it is truly a journey. Anytime that we are healing from things in our lives, from our past, it is truly a journey. And on this journey, we may make a lot of progress, and there might be times where we pause, or where there might be times where we take a step backwards. But can I just remind you that you are still on the right path? Even when it looks confusing, even when it looks messy, even when it feels hard, even when you feel stagnant, you are still on the right path. Continue your journey. Continue to heal. Depression doesn't define who you are. You get to rewrite your story. And I encourage you every single day, rewrite it one step, one word, one day at a time. Look, y'all, thank you again for spending this time with me today. I truly, truly am so grateful every time that we get to have a conversation of how we can better our lives, or how we can move forward in our lives, and how we can be in a better space. Look, y'all, when I say that I'm rooting for y'all, I really am. When I say that I pray for y'all, I really am. And I really do. I may not even know who you are personally, but God knows. And sometimes I don't even have to know what to pray for. But when I just shout out, God, bless that person that is struggling with suicide. Bless that person that is feeling anxious right now, that is feeling lonely, that is feeling sad, God, that may be struggling with depression. Look, y'all, I'm putting y'all out in the atmosphere. God knows your name, and he hasn't left you. He will never leave you nor forsake you, but he will be with you even to the end of the world or to the end of the age. And I know sometimes it doesn't feel that way. Sometimes you feel like he has left you. But look, when you lean in and you tap in and you be vulnerable and let him know that, look, God, I'm angry. I'm angry with you. I'm upset. I don't feel good. I feel like you're not here. He doesn't get mad when we are honest and transparent about how we feel. He honors the space that we're in. He understands it, y'all. He was here. Jesus was here in the flesh, walked on this earth, felt the same feelings and emotions we felt. So he understands and he gets it. And sometimes he just wants us to be vulnerable and honest and let him know how we're feeling. All right, y'all. I hope this podcast episode blessed you today. Again, if this is your first time tuning in, I want to welcome you to continue on this journey with us as we continue to tell these stories. And I want you to share this episode. Share it with somebody that you feel like will be encouraged by it. Leave me a rating, leave me a comment, and continue on your journey one step at a time. Dr. Niesha here. I'll see you soon.